I'm Debbie Godfrey. Welcome to the Positive Parenting Pep Talks podcast. For this week, I'm going to be providing you with the Dial a Discipline audio. This is a product I created about a decade and a half ago, quite a while. It was for parents in my classes to have a supplement to the systematic approach to parenting and discipline that I use. It's a handheld wheel that you can hang on your refrigerator or put in your purse, and it helps you when you're in misbehavior situations with being able to brainstorm in the moment ideas for what to do instead. So when I sell this this wheel, there's an audio that goes along with it, which explains exactly how to use it. So that's what I'm giving you for this next week. I'll put a link in the comments to the actual dial if you'd like to purchase it. You don't have to. All of this information that's provided via audio will give you what you need to be able to redirect your children's behavior. Thanks for stopping by.
Now we're going to look at the goal of power. And as simple as redirecting the goal of undue attention was, it's 4 steps. You do it each time. It'll work 85 to 95% of the time. It's very simple to correct the goal of undue attention. The goal of power, however, is much more complicated. We tend to get in a ton of power struggles with our children every day and in so many situations. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the goal of power itself and some of the child's beliefs in that when they're in the goal of power, some of their mistaken beliefs. And then I'm going to give you some options for ways to correct your child's misbehavior when they're in the goal of power. And in the moment when you get into a power struggle with your child, you're just going to have to think fast and hope one of these ideas pops into your head, because it's not such an easy process as is redirecting the goal of undue attention. So just to refresh, when you get into situations and your child's misbehaving and you feel provoked and challenged, like you're going to make them do it, that means your child's mistaken goal is power. And what your child's mistaken belief is I only belong when I boss you and prove that you can't make me do it. And another way I like to look at this is inside a child who's in the goal of power with you, they feel powerless to get their needs met through more appropriate behavior. So they don't know, inside they don't know how to feel powerful in an appropriate way. But I know if I defy you, if I don't do what you say and you get all crazy, I feel powerful. So that's what it looks like when your child's in the mistaken goal of power. So when you need to redirect this goal, one of the first things you need to do is what I call drop your end of the tug of war. So when you're in a verbal battle where you're telling your child to do something and they're saying no, that's basically what a power struggle is. You need to diffuse the power struggle. And this is your job as the parent. Diffusing the power struggle is a very high level of communication skill. Children are not born knowing how to do this. So what you need to do, the only way you can diffuse that power struggle, that you can drop your end of the tug of war, is to stop talking. So you're telling your kid to do something, they're saying no, telling them to do something, they're saying no, you stop talking. Now, often we expect our kids to do this first. Don't talk back to me. You listen to what I'm saying. And what we're teaching them is to get the last word in. We're actually role modeling in those situations to get the last word in. So you're now going to role model something completely new. You're going to drop your end of the tug of war by stopping talking. And you're now going to be role modeling, when I'm in a power struggle with somebody, I stop talking. I diffuse the power struggle. This is a very high level communication skill or tool, and it'll take a long time for your kids to learn it, maybe 6 or 8 years of role modeling this before they'll learn this. But they will learn it if you role model it to them consistently. So you're going to stop talking. You're going to also remember to be what we call kind and firm. So when you're dealing with a child in the goal of power, it doesn't work to be too strict as the parent, to say, you do what I say, it's my way or the highway. That kind of attitude when you're redirecting power struggles will always cause rebellion in the more extroverted kids and withdraw in more introverted kids. So they're either going to fight or flee. It won't help to be too strict when you're trying to redirect power struggles. It also won't help to be what we call too kind. So letting them get away with things, not keeping appropriate boundaries, not following through with what you say you're going to do. All of those are ways to be too kind. So what we're looking for is for you to be both kind and firm. So when you're redirecting these kids in the goal of power, you're going to firmly discipline and kindly discipline both at the same time. That's what we're shooting for. So maintaining that balance of kindness and firmness as you're correcting their misbehavior. So, and you also don't want to stand and fight, and you don't want to walk away in frustration. And that's what on your dial of discipline where it says don't fight or give in. So you need to have an attitude of, I love you, I'm not going to power struggle with you, but we're going to figure out how we're going to work this out together. You may not say that verbally, but you'll be thinking it in your head. You're going to be standing present with your child, not fighting, but not giving in either. So maintaining that attitude of kindness and firmness, I'm not going to fight and I'm not going to give in, and I'm not going to fuel this power struggle by engaging verbally with you. Then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to correct your child next. So once you've diffused the power struggle and you're maintaining that attitude of kindness and firmness, of not fighting and not giving in, you're going to have to come up with something. So the first and greatest way to do this is to offer them choices. If you're in a power struggle over them getting into their jammies, do you want to wear your red ones or your blue ones? And this really helps kids that are 2 or 3 years old. Oh, I want to wear my red ones, and they get their jammies on that way. But choices need to be age appropriate. So if you say to your 5 or 6 year old, do you want to wear your red jammies or your blue ones? Well, what do they say? Green and none. And so it's really important that you make sure that the choices are age appropriate. So with your 5 or 6 year old, you might want to give them the choices to, do you want to go get your jammies on hopping on one foot or doing cartwheels to your room? And that might be more appropriate for an older child. So giving them choices, making sure that the choices are age appropriate. The other thing about choices is often you really want them to do one choice and you really don't want them to do another choice. And when they pick that other choice, you try to talk them out of it. That's not fair. That's cheating. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure if you provide 2 choices that you support your child at 100% whatever they choose. Now, maybe giving choices isn't going to work in a certain power struggle you're having. So another option is going to be to give your child an appropriate way to feel powerful. If you remember that this child is feeling powerless inside, what they need is a way to feel powerful appropriately rather than in this disrespectful way that they're behaving right now. So you want to think of, here's how you can do this. In whatever situation you're in, you can ask yourself, how can I give my child more power right now? Now, this is going to be the last thing that occurs to you. When you're in a power struggle with your child, I don't want to minimize how challenging this can be. Because when you're in a power struggle with your child, the last thing that's going to occur to you is to think, how can I give my child more power right now? However, this is going to be one of the best ways to correct their misbehavior, because when you're in situations with your child and they're feeling powerless inside, so they're power struggling with you, when you give them an appropriate way to feel powerful, not only are you correcting their misbehavior, but you're also building their self-esteem at the very same time. So this is a very powerful way to correct their misbehavior. So you're going to ask yourself, how can I give my child more power right now? And maybe you're having a fight over brushing their teeth. And so you might say, how about if you be toothbrush cop? So that's giving them more power in this situation. And they'll say, what do you mean? Well, how about if it's your job to make sure everybody brushes their teeth? And so now your child will run around and, say, did you brush your teeth? Did you brush your teeth? But they'll go brush their teeth because they have to go brush their teeth first if they're the toothbrush cop. Another way that this worked for me, my son, I had trouble when he was little with him getting his seatbelts on. So I said, hey, Michael, how about if you become in charge of being the seatbelt checker? He's like, huh? And I said, well, how about if when we get in the car, your job is to make sure everybody has their seatbelts on? And why don't you say seatbelt check? And that means we each have to put our hands up and say, I've got mine on. And he's like, okay, cool. That'd be fun. So now we get in the car, he jumps in, puts his seatbelt on, and he says, seatbelt check. And everybody, the girls and I all have to go raise our hand and go, I got mine on. I got mine on. I got mine on. And it really smoothed through that time where we were having power struggles over getting our seatbelts on. And it was really funny. A few years after that, when he was probably 6, all of a sudden he started fighting me over the seatbelt again. And I was like, Michael, what the heck? What are you fighting with me? And I started getting into some power struggles with him about it. And then I thought, well, why don't I give it a shot? It worked when he was 3, who knows? So we get in the car and I said, seatbelt check. And he looked and he's like, oh, okay. And he goes, seatbelt check. And the girls in the back said, oh, forget it, because he was so old. But it did remind him of what happened when he was younger, and he stopped fighting me over the seatbelts again. So even though sometimes the tools don't work through all of their phases, all of their ages, that little reminder there kind of had reminded him of how it felt when he was a little guy and got empowered, and he just decided to quit power struggling me with over getting the seatbelts on. Okay, so that's all that's on your dial of discipline for redirecting power struggles. However, there's a lot of other ideas that I have for this, and I'm just going to give you one or two, and maybe in the future you might want to pick up an additional CD on correcting power struggles, because this is something that I do a 2-hour workshop on. But another idea that you can do is to do something unexpected. So a lot of times kids expect to get yelled at, so maybe that you laugh instead of yelling. Or I know for me, one time my kids were way out of control. I said, go to bed. And they were screaming. They were bouncing off the walls. Bedtime. It was summer and I had put them to bed too late. So they were really out of their minds, but we were in a big power struggle over them going to bed. So I ran and I got 4 flashlights and I gave each of the kids a flashlight and I said, hey, you guys, let's go run around the block. And so 10 o'clock at night, we went and ran around the block with flashlights and our jammies, came home and I said, go to bed. And they all went to bed. So doing something unexpected is a really fun way to redirect a power struggle. And another way is to use a signal. So in situations when you get into power struggles, to come up with a signal. And one mom and a little girl, my mom said, honey, we're always getting in power struggles. How about if we come up with a signal that means let's stop power struggling? So why don't you make up a word that means let's stop power struggling? And the little girl thought about it and she said, okay, say broccoli. So they would get into a power struggle and the mom or the little girl had to remember to say broccoli. And they would, well, what do you think happened? I mean, they would both laugh and the power struggling would stop. So this is just a few ideas, but remember, don't fight, don't give in, be kind and firm, and then figure out a way to give them a useful way to feel powerful rather than this inappropriate way that they're being powerful now.
Thank you for listening to today's Positive Parenting Pep Talks podcast. If you're into season 2 and you're listening to all these great questions that the parents have and answers and ideas for what to do in all these different situations with your kids, please help us out. Like, share, subscribe, and especially leave us a positive review. All of that helps the podcast grow, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again for being here, and happy parenting.